Angry Guy here. And today we're discussing why are women shocked men no longer respect them? Why are women shocked that men no longer respect them? That is the topic we are discussing today. It's pretty interesting, but men are beginning to see through the games, they're beginning to see through the nonsense, and this is why men are walking away. Or if they do participate, it's basically recreational use only. Let's go ahead and just jump into the first video.
When y'all go out together, who pays?
Him.
Is there ever a time where you pay?
Yes, but he give me the money back.
Yeah, like I don't have cash, I'm just like pay and I'll give it back. But to be honest, like if you can't pay, you shouldn't have hoes, bro. To be honest,
So it's a man's job to like provide for the girl and everything.
100%.
So if he's gonna provide for you, and protect you, what do you bring to him?
Me?
Just you.
Yeah. I don't know.
Would you take him if he was broke?
Maybe.
Why is it a maybe and not like a surefire?
I feel like she probably would, but it wouldn't last. Like if I was broke, we're in Miami. There's 100 rich niggas out here would pay for a girl, so it's like.
You see, I mean, guys, men are waking up. They're realizing that, you know what? This isn't working anymore. I'm not going to participate. Or if I do, it's all about the money. Guys now have their heads screwed on a lot better. They see the games, they see the BS, they see the nonsense, and they realize it's recreational use only. That's the relationship in Western society. This guy basically said if you're going to have 304s, you need to have money. And she was standing right next to him. And she didn't even blink. She didn't flinch because she knows what her role is. She knows why she's there. All right. He asked, would you be with him if he didn't have money? And she hesitated. That's the relationship that it is today. Guys, don't forget what happened with Brickgate. For those of you that know what Brickgate are, there was the Somalian woman in Texas who claimed that she got into an argument with a guy who had a brick, and the guy used the brick on her, and then she ended up with a swelling, and that was all fabricated. It was complete lies. It never actually happened. And she used the event to collect over $40,000 in donations from Black women, predominantly Black women, who she scammed. And she's been running these scams for years, okay? And she dragged Black men through the mud. And then when it came out that, this actually didn't happen, the same women that were, putting her on a pedestal were like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. This is the kind of thing that women are facing regardless, and we need protection. And guys, it's absolutely sad. It's miserable. It's disgusting, but that's the reality of things. We have another video, and we're going to jump into that.
If Malcolm X was alive today, he would be so ashamed of you.
So let me get this straight. A Black woman gets hit in the face with a brick for rejecting a man, while a bunch of other men are standing around watching. And y'all are trying to villainize her. Is it crack?
And he was talking all that trash about Black women all over the social media. We ain't gonna do shit. We ain't marching with you. We not protesting for you. We not doing shit. Handle it yourself.
All day yesterday, the men were on Twitter talking about what we supposed to do, risk our life for a stranger? Here y'all go making it about all men. If one bad man enacts violence upon a woman and 49 other men stand around watching, then we now have 50 bad men in the room. So in that scenario, yes, it's all of you.
So guys, I want y'all to see what their current logic is. If you walk away, if you don't help women, you are now a bad man. All right. So basically what they're doing is they're calling men walking away bad men. They're calling men who opt out of relationships and dating bad men. They're calling men who don't give their money to women bad men. They're calling the passport bros bad men. Because They're walking away from Western society, Western women. They're choosing not to have relationships, date, and marry. They're opting out. And what do you hear? And what does she say? If you have one man who does something to a woman and 49 men stand around doing nothing, now you have 50 bad men because they're now all guilty. Think about the terrible logic that is. So what does this mean? You know, they wonder why men will no longer help them, run to their aid, and they think that by shaming and by saying things like this is going to get men to participate and to come and to help them again after M2 and everything that's happened. They think that this is the way forward. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's absolutely sickening. It's sad. But that's the state of affairs in Western society today. And women have nothing. They don't know how to attract a man using honey. They only know how to shame men, attack men, and put down men because of the things that they're not getting from them. And that's all there is to it right now. And then they wonder why men no longer respect them. They wonder why men no longer trust them. And after this came out that it was all a big hoax, you had them on social media, black women refusing to forget about apologizing. They began doubling down and saying, regardless if it's true or not, it doesn't change the fact that women are suffering and struggling. And these types of things happen to women each and every single day. And we need social change. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. And I've said this already. I've said it once and I'll say it again. This is why these passport bros, these women will not be able to have access to these men anymore. These are men with money. These are men with education. These are men with self-respect, decency. These are men that are built to be fathers, built to be providers and protectors, not like the Chad and the Tyrone and the Ray Ray and the Pookie and the Quan and the Enriquez, not like these dudes, all right? And these women, they don't understand. There was already a pandemic of fatherlessness in the black community, for example, and now these men are picking up and taking off, and they don't realize that they're gone. They're not coming back. And you know, what are they doing? How are they shaming? They're like, all of these men are now bad men. If you don't give us what we want, you're a bad man. You're just as bad as the person who did it. It's crazy. It's absolutely insane. Let's continue watching some of this video.
Ever heard the story of the boy who cried wolf? The moral of this age-old tale is clear. Trust, once violated, can have serious consequences. Welcome to Manners for Highlights Daily. By now, everybody and their mama knows the story of the woman who cried brick.
I think what put all these black men just lost. And then this man hit me. She's and he hit me like.
We decided to wait to do our due diligence before coming out with a video because we didn't want to make a video just for clicks. The situation just seemed off from the start, and we just knew that the truth would come to light soon.
And nobody is questioning the fact that this woman deleted her TikTok, privatized her Instagram, hasn't posted an update on her face on Instagram, but has garnered almost $50,000 in 6 days. That's a little weird to me. Nobody's questioning her, despite the fact that she did this in 2020, did it a little more subtly in 2022, and now again in 2023. Nobody's questioning it. Not a single soul. Really.
As a sociology enthusiast, what piqued my interest in creating this video presentation was the fact that she went viral with false allegations, managed to raise $40K on her GoFundMe page, and the immediate outrage from black women who fell for the scam and subsequently shamed black men for not protecting black women. The videos and comments from outraged women serve as evidence that there are underlying issues or factors that prompt this immediate and strong response.
You lot are sick. Nothing that you dig up from her past and no amount of skits that you pull from her page is going to change the fact that that man could have killed her and she should have been protected. That man was a bitch, and so was every man that let it happen.
The video clip you've just seen will serve as the foundation of our presentation because it provides insight into the answers we're going to provide about why modern women don't deserve protection from men. Keyword, deserve. we delve into the topic of the law of cause and effect in this video. We're going to break it down into 4 chapters. Childhood, how women take advantage of bias. You can't protect those who don't want protection. Why men have no obligation to protect women. Now it's time for us to get into this and do what we gotta do. Because we men, ain't we? We men, ain't we?
So let me get this straight. A black woman gets hit in the face with a brick for rejecting a man, while a bunch of other men are standing around watching, and y'all are trying to villainize her. Is it crack? All day yesterday, the men were on Twitter talking about what we supposed to do, risk our life for a stranger? Here y'all go making it about all men. If one bad man enacts violence upon a woman and 49 other men stand around watching, then we now have 50 bad men in the room. So in that scenario, yes, it's all of you.
Yes, if you are a human being, at some point you were a baby. As a sociology enthusiast, one of the first lessons I've learned is that the initial education and the foundation of one's beliefs, values, and socialization begin at home during childhood. In modern society, the majority of children are raised by their mothers. In modern Western society, especially in the black community, mama has the biggest influence on the children. Yesterday, we made a video and highlighted important data about child abuse. Janice, read.
Child abuse is deadly. In 2021, an estimated 1,820 children died from abuse and neglect in the United States. Boys have a higher child fatality rate at 3.01 per 100,000 compared to girls at 2.15.
Boys are the most affected. And you can see African American child fatalities is 2.9 times greater than that of white children and 3.9 times greater than Hispanic children.
I want to tell y'all something very interesting about the United Kingdom, because some of you may not know this. So in the United Kingdom, more baby boys are born than baby girls every year. But because so many baby boys don't make it to adulthood, you end up with a surplus of women in the United Kingdom. And it's been like that for decades now. Decades. It's kind of like nature does it deliberately, because nature knows that as men, we are less taken care of. A baby boy, if something is wrong, their parents will just leave them in the crib to cry, versus a baby girl who they'll be immediately attentive to. Maybe the baby is in a position where it cannot breathe properly. You know, maybe it starts to choke and it needs someone to come and pat its back. There are a variety of reasons why these things happen. Parents are more attentive to baby girls. They will rush to a baby girl's aid while they will leave a baby boy to cry and to fend for themselves. And it's extremely clear when you see the high mortality rates. All right, especially for SID, sudden infant expiration syndrome. I switched out the word, but you know what I mean by that. And it's so much higher for baby boys than baby girls, because parents don't give the same kind of care to baby boys. But then the feminists will come and say, oh, that's not the reason why. The reason why is because baby girls have better immune systems and girls are stronger than boys from birth. Girls are stronger than boys from the moment that they're born. That's the reason why there's such a large disparity. It's not because men live harder lives than women. It's not because men receive significantly less care than women. Oh, no. It's because women are stronger. We are genetically, we are physically, we are mentally, we are physically, we are genetically stronger than the men. Genetically, but we have the same genes. Oh, but just by being a biological female, you gain that advantage over men. Guys, it's insanity. From the very moment that a girl that a baby is born, they receive privilege, and that privilege is so significant that it's basically the difference between life and no life. And it's sad and it's pathetic, but that is the reality that we are faced with, and it's something that every man has to take into consideration. And now you have these women who are basically looking at society and they're furious that men are walking away. And what do they call men walking away? You're bad men. You are criminals. This is what they're doing now. That's what they're doing. You heard what this woman basically said. All right. If there's a bad man and 49 men who don't do anything, they're also bad. Now you have 50 bad men. In other words, if men refuse to protect women, give their resources to women, if men walk away and go away, and they're bad men, and they're the same as criminals. Guys, I don't know if you remember this story. All right, I gave you guys this story many years ago, but years ago, all right, many centuries ago, millennia ago, we go to Rome, and the Roman Empire. At the beginning of the Roman Empire and the greatness of the Roman Empire, the man was firmly the leader of the home, and he had control over the wife entirely, over both life and death. And then guess what ends up happening? Rome is extremely prosperous, but someone gets the great idea to say, hey, we should introduce no-fault divorce. Yeah, this happened thousands of years ago. They decided that no-fault divorce was a good idea. So they introduced no-fault divorce. And what ended up happening? The women began divorcing their husbands, getting into relationships with gladiators. Yeah, gladiators are slaves, all right, that are forced to fight to live. So they started getting in relationships with gladiators. And then they also began secretly offing their husbands. So then men stopped getting married. Men stopped having children. And what ended up happening? I forget if it was Julius or Augustus Caesar, but it was one of the Caesars basically said that the men who refuse to marry are worse than all of the criminals in all of Rome. All right? They are worse than the thieves. They're worse than the thieves. They're worse than the thieves. They are worse than any criminal in all of the Roman Empire. This is madness. This is absolute madness. This actually happened. The men who refused to marry were barred from going to any form of entertainment. In other words, they couldn't go to public shows, so they couldn't go to performances. Think of it as like going to the movies. They were barred from going to the movies. They were barred from going to the Coliseum, so they couldn't watch the fights. All right? So basically, no wrestling matches for them. And during the winter, they basically had them in the streets. Single men were forced to run in the streets behind one another in chain gang style. Chain gang. They literally had chain gangs in the Roman Empire. And if you were a single man who refused to take a wife, you were forced to run in the cold, chain gang style. And men still refused to marry. Fast forward, like, I forget if it was like 100 or 200 years later. I think it was maybe about 100 years later. The Roman Empire no longer has a military because men have walked away from society. So men will no longer fight to protect the country, which is another reason why the draft makes no sense, because they knew back then that it didn't work. All right. And they're trying to do it now. If you try to make a man fight against their will, they're not going to do it. They're going to run away as fast as they can. So the Roman Empire had no military left, and they were using they were using hired help. I'm trying to remember the exact term for it, but the mercenaries. So they had paid mercenaries that they were using to fight to protect the Roman Empire. And of course, keep in mind, the men had opted out of society. So the men were not working anymore. because the average Roman citizen, Rome was a very wealthy empire. It was so wealthy at the beginning of the Roman Empire that the average Roman citizen did not have to work. They would be given, you didn't have to work. All right, you would get access to drink and bread and food, so you could basically you didn't have to work. You had a roof, you would have a roof over your head, you would always be given food, you would always be given drink. That type of society allowed women to live carelessly with no fault divorce. They basically took a hold of society and they ran it into the ground. And the men, basically, we saw the mouse utopia occur, where the men said, yeah, F this, I'm out. They stopped marrying, they stopped reproducing, they stopped focusing, they stopped protecting society. They had to turn, the Roman Empire had to turn to mercenaries to protect the Roman Empire. But guess what? Eventually, because the men weren't working and the men were no longer creating wealth, because it's men who create wealth in society, the empire began running out of money and eventually was flat broke. Now, the empire couldn't protect itself. So what ended up happening? So they hire the mercenaries, and the mercenaries are like, hey, we need, how are you going to pay us? And the king is like, and well, I said the king, but the emperor is like, okay, well, we'll pay you in land. We'll pay you in land. So the mercenaries are like, you'll pay us in land? We work for gold and silver, bro. And the king and the emperor is like, no, we'll pay you in land. We'll give you some land. And they call the emperor's bluff. They said, this emperor has no clothes. In other words, he can't back it up. They call the emperor's bluff. They pillaged the entire Roman kingdom. And Rome fell. And when Rome fell, you have to understand, the Roman Empire spanned all over Europe. All right? At that time. Like most of Europe was like the Roman Empire. So when the Roman Empire fell, after the mercenaries pillaged the Roman Empire, we entered 1,000 years of darkness. We fell into the Dark Ages. What were the Dark Ages like? Imagine living in caves and eating squirrel meat. Those were the Dark Ages. Those were the ages where everyone thought that everyone else was a witch. Okay? We also got hits like the bubonic plague. All of this happened as a result of society collapsing, as a result of men walking away. The state of affairs were quite grave. Quite grave. In fact, math and science were lost. Many of the major innovations in math and science were lost during the Dark Age. Now, don't get me wrong. Obviously, there was still some math and some science because they were building things like the Sistine Chapel during that time. So there still existed something, but it wasn't what it was before. You have to understand that the Roman Empire, I forget what these things are called. I don't know if they're called aqueducts, but they literally were able to transport water from far distances away. They had running water, guys. Running water in the Roman Empire. All right? This was thousands of years ago. They had running water in the Roman Empire. Running water. And not only did they have running water, they had roads. Roads. Running empire. Bathrooms. Okay? If you live when the Roman Empire was at its peak, we could literally, it wasn't exactly like the modern day era, but you could definitely survive. One of the big problems they had was sanitation. They didn't understand the importance of sanitation. Outside of that, things were pretty much normal. They had universities, giant universities. It was unbelievable. It was an amazing empire. And the women destroyed it. They absolutely destroyed it, because when women are allowed to run wild in society, okay, they go and pick up every Chad and Tyrone they possibly can. Okay, and they will even take the lives of their husbands so that they can live happily ever after with Chad and Tyrone. And that's where we're at. That's where we are literally at this moment. That's where we're at. And it's it's sad and it's disgusting. And now what are women doing? They're doing what they do best. If you don't provide for them and if you don't protect them, you're a criminal. So that's the next step, really, when it comes to the passport bros, calling the passport bros criminals, because they're calling all black men who don't protect them criminals. And don't forget, these are the same women that said the passport bros were going over to other countries to do bad, to commit terrible acts and evil. That's what these women said. They said the passport bros were up to no good and they were going over to these countries to do bad, which everyone knows is not true. Because if they were actually doing these things, they would be in handcuffs. They would be in jail. I tell you.
Janice, read.
Nationally, neglect is the most common form of abuse. 3/4, 76% of victims are neglected, 16% are physically abused, and 10% are sexually abused, and 0.2% are sex trafficked.
Women get a pass for being terrible parents. We give you a familiar example of the neglect and disrespect that young men suffer at a young age.
What did you say when he was born?
I remember he came out with his hands balled up. Son, the son I wanted. His dad said we got $1 million baby boy.
My dad used to tell my mom I was gonna be a world champ.
I told him he wouldn't be
When you hear this, you have to understand that this is not even the worst part of a child's upbringing. It's neglect in various other aspects. Take a look at the titles of these articles. Many of America's black youth cannot read or do math, and that imperils us all. Black boys in crisis. They aren't
Now, guys, do you see the reason why I keep on complaining about Gen Z? Why I go ballistic about Gen Z? This is not just a problem with black boys. This is a Gen Z thing, but it's even worse in the black community. Gen Z doesn't want to read. Gen Z doesn't read. Gen Z doesn't write. Gen Z can't do math. Gen Z can't read a map. And they don't care. Gen Z doesn't use deodorant. Gen Z doesn't bathe every day. Gen Z doesn't change their undergarments. They don't believe they have to change their underwear daily. This is serious. Guys, we are literally going backwards, all right? This is some real caveman stuff. And not even the cavemen would want to live like this. Think about this very carefully. No one wants to live in their own filth. And Gen Z is very, very comfortable living like this. And why do we have this today? Why do we have this? Well, who primarily raised Gen Z? Women! We need to be very honest. Gen Z is a product, a heavy product of fatherless homes. Children being raised primarily by women. And if there was a man in the house, he was a simp. He was a simp. S-I-M-P. He was a simp. And if you have a father as a simp, that's not a father. All right? That's a toy for the mother. Men are more than money. We provide protection. We provide guidance. We repair things. We fix things. We maintain things. We respond in times of crises. Something goes wrong. We're the ones to run out there and help and immediately do something. You're in a house and the sink is clogged and there's no one else to do anything. The man grabs a wrench. He doesn't really know what the hell he's doing, but he gets under there and he starts working on it anyway. Why? Because he's the man. Car gets stuck. What does he do? He starts pushing in the snow. Why? Because he's the man. Anytime something goes wrong, suddenly the women become women and the men have to be men. The funny thing about Gen Z is that Gen Z is different, because Gen Z, they'll just identify as women. And it's absolutely ridiculous. Shout out to Captain Marvel, who says hello, angry guy, and everyone in the chat. Shout out, bro. How's it going? Guys, it's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. All right? It's sad and it's pathetic. Sad and pathetic. Roger Spice says, angry guy, thanks for the stream. No problem, bro. I'm glad to see you guys here.
Reading or data exclusive. 75% of Black California boys don't meet state reading standards. These articles reveal a lot about their upbringing and how it affects girls differently from boys. Mothers raise their sons differently than their daughters. Check this out.
We can look at some mothers, and
I've said this years ago. I said it and I meant it. Women raise their sons to be simps. They raise their sons to be simps because fathers will tell their daughters, listen, baby, daddy was a dog when he was out there. He was trying to hump everything that walked, all right? I don't want that for you, all right? He'll tell his daughter about male nature and how men are and how men think. It's amazing how a man can have this talk with his daughter, but a woman cannot have that talk with her son, because she would have to then admit that she did these things and that's who she is as a person. And women will never own up to the fact that they're little devils. Men will own up to who they are and their imperfections. Women will never do these things because a part of their nature is deception. And they will never admit that they are deceivers and that they use these tactics to trap men and extract wealth and resources from men. Because another point is that if a mother reveals these things to her son, then the son's going to say, well, then that means that you might do these exact same things to my dad. Also, shout out to Zetapal. Thanks, Zetapal, for that $5 super. He says, wasn't there a movie called World War Gen Z? I think it was World War Z. But yeah, that is a good one. And then Yudi says, Gen Z are unfit physically and mentally. They completely are. Calvin Rogers is in the chat. Shout out to old Calvin. Good to see you, Calvin. Says hello to the chat room and salute. Good to see you, brother.
it's some, not all. The rumor is that some mothers raise their daughters and love their sons. My boy always loved his mama. 40 years of age, still went home with you. That needs to stop. Your boy is not yours. He is a future husband, a future father, and needs to be raised that way. Now, what do I mean by raised? Teach your son how to cook, to make up his own bed, to clean up his own bathtub ring because you raised your daughter. On the honor roll every marking period. Goes to church with you every Sunday, and she can cook, sew, iron, and clean. All but then we have your son. Ain't never seen an honor roll. He plays basketball all evening long. Never goes to church and can't boil a hot dog. The rumor is we have some, not all, raising their daughters and loving their sons.
Shout out to Dr. Kunjufu for this pure gold and priceless lessons. This was almost 40 years ago and it still applies. And unfortunately, its effects have persisted over time and in many ways worsened. These women turn to social media to reinforce the lessons mama instilled in them from childhood. That men ain't shit. Check this out.
Just say you scared. Just say you scared of other black men. That's what you need to do. Because black men have been getting arrested for centuries in this country. Who you think pays their bond? Who you think pays their commissary? Who you think goes and visits them every week? Is it you? Is it those weak-ass men that were standing there and did nothing? Just say you scared.
What's crazy is that the men are too scared to step in for a woman in a